Hello and welcome to an unexpected podcast. My name is Tim, and with me as always, we have Matt, Rainier, and Devin. On this week's episode, we have special guest, Matthew Hammond.
Hello, everybody.
Before we get into that, Matt, I know you had something you wanted to speak about.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. Pretty excited for that. Just wanted to give a plug for the Húrin show, which is a show all about the Middle Earth strategy battle game that myself and my three brothers, Marcus, Mitchell, and Myers, run. We just talk about list building, things we like in the game, and we tend to do a lot of tournament and game reviews, so verbal bat reps, which is interesting for us, probably not so interesting for everybody else. But if you have some spare time on your painting table, come check us out, the Húrin show. We also have an Instagram account, _Húrin_show.
Just curious, Matt, where can I find that if I wanted to check it out?
Thank you. So it's pretty much available on any podcast platform. So your typical Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, any podcast platform we're published on.
Okay. Just as a heads up to everybody new, we are now also on Spotify ourselves, so we're now available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So if anybody would like to listen to us on that as well, we're available. For this week's episode, we're going to be going over the heroes from Gondor at War and then the warriors of Minas Tirith. But before we get into that, we're going to go over a list by Nathan Adams. So I will bring it over to Matt Iverson, and he'll go over that real quick.
All right. So Nathan's list is an Osgiliath Ranger 700-point list. And he says at the end, kind of the bottom line for this, which is Ranger's list without being a sit-in-the-corner Ranger player. So this is not an exclusively all Ranger list. So points to Nathan for keeping it fun for your opponents and tying a big weight around your ankle, which is fine. So we're going to go through this list and maybe talk about some ways that we can tune this up maybe a little bit without changing it into the obvious just buy all Rangers with spears and shoot your opponent to death. So the first warband is Faramir on horse with bow at 95 points. He is leading 5 Osgiliath veterans with shield, 5 rangers with spear, 1 warrior of Minas Tirith with shield and banner. The next warband is Madril. He is leading 4 Osgiliath veterans with shield, 7 rangers of Gondor, 1 ranger with spear. The next is a captain of Gondor on horse. And it's unclear what this captain of Gondor has. So the captain of Gondor definitely has the horse.
It's just a horse because he's 65 points.
Well, yeah, but he starts off at 50 points. So he's either got the lance or the shield, but not both. And it's not clear which one he has. Then he has 4 warriors of Minas Tirith with shield, 2 warriors of Minas Tirith with shield and spear, and 2 rangers without spear. Then we have Damrod, who is leading 2 Osgiliath veterans with shield and 2 rangers. Mablung, who is leading 2 warriors of Minas Tirith with shield, 1 ranger with spear, and 1 ranger. Anborn, who is leading 2 warriors of Minas Tirith with shield, 1 ranger with spear, and 1 ranger. And it totals out at 6 heroes, 26 bows, 49 models, and 11 might. So, thoughts on this list? I know I have, but I'll let somebody jump in because I've been talking for a while.
Well, Nathan, have you considered just, taking all Rangers and shooting your opponent to death? I don't know. I mean,
he considered that, but he still wants to have friends.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, as soon as you start taking Osgiliath veterans, it's very clear that you're trying to make this more of a thematic list. I mean, the Osgiliath veterans, unfortunately, don't really carry their weight in points, but it looks like you have a lot of Rangers without spears. Noticing in Majora's Warband, you have just Rangers with swords, and then there's, once again, Captain of Gondor, once again, just Rangers with swords, and the same thing in Damrod, same thing in, a lot of these. So I'm actually curious why your Rangers, okay, I know you didn't want to sit back and shoot, but I would have figured the point of the list was to put the Rangers behind the shield wall-ish kind of guys, but that's not really their function here, because you don't have any spears. So your Osgiliath veterans don't have the spears, and it looks like a lot of your warriors of Minas Tirith don't have the spears. So one just note I would say is put more spears on the list, unless your intent really is just to swarm around your opponent. But yeah, I mean, if you just wanted to bring this thematic list up to speed, I would say more spears by default. Captain of Gondor, I would give him a lance over the shield. His purpose is heroic march and the hitting power, hence you have him on a horse. So I think he's a good add into the list. Other than that, I mean, like I said, trying to give advice here without just saying you need more bows, that would be my biggest point, is spears in the list.
Now, do you guys feel like with the list that obviously I think he's trying to do like a third kind of a thing with the bows, so then that way he still gets the, that kind of benefit. But are you happy with like a third Rangers, a third Osgiliath Veterans, a third Warriors of Minas Tirith, or do you guys think it should be something like what he has now?
Well, I actually think for like Damrod, Mablung, and Anborn, the makeup could be tweaked a little bit, because if you are not going to sit in the corner and you're going to try and take the fight to your opponent, which is not this army's natural anyways, like take Anborn's warband, for example. He's got 2 Warriors of Minas Tirith with shield, 1 Ranger with spear, and 1 Ranger. Well, if you're moving that warband up, you definitely want some more people to support around Anborn, because Anborn can get isolated and killed really quickly. So to Devin's point on spears, but I think you actually want to tweak the warrior concepts if you're going to play it this way.
So I guess my thought on this would be, I think this list could benefit from some warband specialization here. First of all, as far as the Captain of Gondor goes, he should get both the lance and the shield. So find 5 points from somewhere and give him both of those things. And then he becomes your hitting mobile hero. I think I would concentrate the Warriors of Minas Tirith in his warband, take out the Rangers, and then you just have 1 warband of tin cans, the shield wall of tin cans, with the Captain of Gondor on the horse who can march them around if he needs to, and has some hitting power to come in and run some guys over with his lance. Then I would, if you're going to have Osgiliath veterans in this list, I would put them in Faramir's warband. I don't think there's any reason to put them anyplace else, because they get the fight 4 from Faramir, and it's a little redundant with the Rangers there. But I think maybe you put the Warriors of Minas Tirith in with the Captain of Gondor's warband. You can put Osgiliath veterans in Faramir's warband, maybe with some Warriors of Minas Tirith behind them, or some Rangers behind them. Those are your 2 close fighting warbands. And then I would take Madril's warband, Mablung's warband, Damrad's warband, and Anborn's warband, and I would concentrate your Rangers there. You still end up with Rangers in 4 different places, so you can shoot from 4 different angles. You've got Madril, so Master of Battle doesn't really scare you that much. The odds that you're going to end up coming someplace you don't want to go down dramatically with that. So it's unlikely you're going to have like Damrod and some Rangers, trapped in the middle of nowhere, unless you want them to be, unless it's literally the middle of nowhere and their job is just to go and shoot stuff. But Anborn, and in particular Mablung, with his special rule of basically giving stock unseen to his whole warband, don't really benefit from having Warriors of Minas Tirith in with them. Their job is just to go someplace away from the battlefield, hide in some terrain, and shoot out of it. And I don't think I think the Warriors of Minas Tirith are kind of wasted in that situation, and you could use them just to beef up Faramir's warband and the Captain of Gondor's warband, who are the guys who are going to do your fighting in the battle line.
What do you guys think if this list is designed to go engage? What do you guys think about bringing Frodo and Sam to get the have fight value in the free heroic combats if you're trying to take the fight?
That's a nice thought. I like that. I like that thought, actually. That's probably
I like it too, combined with the Captain of Gondor with a lance. Like, that sounds like a really spicy combination that can do a lot of damage.
Oh yeah, throw in the Captain of Gondor with the lance, and then have Frodo put on the ring, run through the lines, and have the fight value of whoever he's fighting. That's a good idea.
I mean, 700. Well, yeah, 700 points. You're dealing with larger heroes and such. So I think Frodo probably becomes a little more necessary here, because I mean, once you get an Azog running around, he'll take
Yeah,
out
there's
half this
nothing.
list with you. There's like nothing you can do about it.
I have a question. Can you add knights to this or to
No, and
Osgiliath?
actually,
No.
I'll mention that. I was going to mention that
Okay.
is the fact that once we're bringing them now is that if you're going to go 33% Rangers, reasonably, I mean, I get you can still keep it thematic to a Rangers of Athelian list without playing the Legion because you're not getting the bonuses or benefits of the Legion anyway. So I would just skip the Legion entirely, play it exactly as is, but then add in a few knights. And that was something I was going to bring up, and it just you're not really changing too much of the format of it. You do have a captain on horse, you do have Farmir on horse, so it's not like you're ruining your theme by having a few more horses. But having a few knights probably would add that versatility you need for a few missions that require that. So that's one thing I would do if you're going to go 33% those. Skip the Legion and just play it normal. Obviously, once you talk about,
Although he doesn't have 33%.
Yeah, he has slightly
oh, is it
above.
33?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
he has
he's about
21 regular bows plus 5 heroes, so he's 26,
Okay.
but 21. So he's slightly above 33%, but he's trying to keep it to like that 40-ish% kind of
Okay. I guess I was going off
40 to 50%.
Tim's comment earlier. I thought he had 33% bows. So.
Yeah, it's close though.
No,
Okay.
but speaking of bows too, like I like what Matt said. And a lot of times when you have crossbows or you have elf shooting, you want to kind of spread it out. But with your list, I'd also consider concentrating it because a couple shots here and there of strength 2 isn't going to do much damage. But if you have like six shots from one angle, 6 shots from the other, it's going to be a little more menacing and give you a little cover fire, especially when you play this aggressively, which will most likely happen.
I think an interesting point here is that at 700 points, even though 700 points is still a high amount of points, he does have almost 50 models with 11 might. I mean, he has almost that swarm mentality with 26 bows. I mean, it should do pretty well. I mean, obviously you got to worry about the fluffiness of the Osgiliath veterans, of course, but he has a lot of numbers and he has a ton of bows to go with those numbers. So he should do pretty well at 700 points with this list. I mean,
and I kind of like even see like he might have done this on purpose, but why he didn't bring so many spears, because I wonder if he has that mentality of the swarm, especially considering he has, let me see, 1, 2, 3, he has 6 war bands.
Well, do you think
I
he's
cannot
trying
think
to
of a competitive army that doesn't support. Like I'm trying to like think of that because like literally, I mean, when we talk about alerts to scouts or we talk about Dunlin pre the update or anything, any list honestly that doesn't have spears, hell, you can have 100 ruffians and they still don't win games due to the lack of supports. Not supporting your battle lines. I mean, having only 1 dice in the fight, you're just asking for the slow death.
So would you? So you would drop 1 or 2 models to make up for the fact that they don't
literally one model would give him like 8
spears,
9 spears.
Yeah.
It's just the problem is when you don't have the spear supports. I mean, yeah, he has the banner, that's great, but if you don't have spear supports, when you're winning fights, you're often not killing, and if you're not winning fights, you're losing the fights, right? And then he has defense 4 or half of his list. So 50 models is great at 700 points, but without the ability to add those extra dice and really start compounding, I mean, every model you kill starts creating a landslide effect on your opponent, and creating a wave that you're, obviously you're killing more and more and more. It kind of exponentially compounds itself. So I just think that not having spears really kills this list's effectiveness. Like you really need it. I mean, I'm trying to understand, Rainier, maybe you have an example of that swarm list that, has won games, won tournaments, but you could argue hobbits, I guess.
I'm just thinking more like Corsairs, because he has.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of thinking.
He has a bit of
Corsairs
shooting. They support, but it's not so much the battle lines. And with this list, there's so many small war bands that you can kind of, I don't know. I just see it as, if you play it right, and of course it takes a lot of practice to do that, but if you play it right, you can have quite a few war bands on the back end of your opponent.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between no spears and half spears, and I think you can. you don't need to have half spears to have this be successful.
I don't think he needs half, but he has like 7.
Yeah.
No, but I see your point though. Like dropping a model for 8 more will go really far, really far.
I think so, but I don't think he needs to go. I don't think he needs to think of this exclusively as a, I'm going to fight this entire army in 2 ranks, because I think Rainier's point is valid. I don't think he needs to do that. I mean, obviously, give a spear to the guy with the banner, because he's not going to be in the front rank anyway, and you can probably drop Madril's Osgiliath vet or all of the Osgiliath vets to just warriors of Minas Tirith. That could give a bunch of additional rangers spears. I mean, the other big problem, as Matt H. brought up, is this list doesn't have a way to get rid of big heroes. I mean, somebody like an Aragorn or a Boromir or a Isildur could just run rampant over this list. And I think that's a good thought of putting Frodo in, so you have kind of some check to a big killer. A big mounted killer in here that, if you're in a scenario where he's going to get into combat on turn 1 and you're never going to have the chance to shoot him, you got to have Frodo. Frodo's really your only chance to kind of put him in to try and take that guy down, or at least off his horse.
Okay, so as a general consensus, would you guys say add Frodo if possible?
Yeah. For a 700-point list, you're going to need an answer to the big guys.
Okay.
And if it even brings like to the theme too, and he's considering, like he says in his review, he wants to do conversions to make it really fit probably the books or the movie scene. So I think, add Frodo.
All right. What about Sam?
I'd be really tempted to add Sam as well, and then swap out Faramir's bow for a lance, so that you could get those heroic combats going off with a little more.
You can't actually give Faramir a lance in the list.
Oh, you
playing
can't?
as Osgiliath Rangers. All you can do is give him a horse.
Good call.
I'm a little hesitant on Sam. I'm not sure what he's adding to the list without taking away numbers, because you're already taking Frodo, which is a hefty 60 points, I think. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty hesitant too, because it seems like his intent is to swarm, especially with the lack of spears and the massive defense for. But you're starting to really punish that swarming more. I mean, I get it's probably like 5 models, but still, like the fact that you're already sacrificing so many models to get Frodo in there. Why Sam? Just curious.
The free heroic combats tend to pile up, but he does have plenty of might already, to your point, Devin, so it might not be worth it with 11 might. He's probably getting a few of those off.
Now, okay, so the Rangers base, I think, are 8 points, if I'm correct? So, So, I mean, if
9
you were
with spear.
Yeah, and if we were getting rid of most models in this list are around 8 points. So in order to get Frodo, you'd have to drop 8 models. So is dropping 8 models for Frodo worth it? Go down to 41?
I think I would also drop Damrod.
Yep, actually, I was about to say that. I'm like, it really comes down to dropping Damrod.
Okay, so
because he's not abusing the bow limit anyway. Damrod serves very little function in this list. Gotcha. So I think dropping Damrod is the right move.
Okay, so you drop Damrod and 4 guys.
And Frodo's bringing in 2 might anyway, so.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so I think the general consensus, Nathan, is to add Frodo, drop Damrod, and add the spears to as many models as you can, so you can kind of get that front rank, back rank kind of a thing. If you ever
at least
tried
8 more spears, not as many, but
yeah. If you can get at least 8 more spears, that'd be great. If you're going to try it out, let us know, and let us know how you do. If anybody else has any lists for the future episodes, please leave those in the comment section as well. We're going to move on to the main topic for today, which is the Warriors of Minas Tirith and the heroes from Gondor at War. So we're going to start off with the heroes first. So I'll move over to Rainier for the first hero.
Uh-oh. Here we go. Forgot his profile already.
Do you want me to read it out? I can read it out.
Okay. So I'll be talking about Húrin the Tall. First off, he's an amazing model. You see him on Forge World website. Very cool. Húrin's base is, I guess you'll correct me, Matt, if I get it wrong. Fight 5, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage
5.
Courage 5, so he's courage 5.
Don't forget strength 4 and defense 6.
Strength 4, defense 6, 3-1-1. He has heroic strike and heroic strength and heroic resolve.
Strike, strength, and resolve. You got it with the third one. Sorry, I
Nice.
buzzed you too early.
Nice.
We gotta get rid of Rainier. He hasn't memorized the whole book yet.
Yeah, it's horrible. I actually don't even know how to play the game either.
Why are you here again? Who invited you?
I'm here because you guys said the other guy like bailed, so I was like, I guess I'll go. Nah, so he's good. He can be mounted. He has a Master Forge sword, which in translation means he gets the Burly special rule. He has Master Forge, right?
Yes, Master
Yeah.
Forge.
Okay,
and an
you
ass
making
sword.
faces, Devin. I'm like, oh no, am I really messing this up? Okay, so he does have special rules that correlate to scenario play. Oh, there's that face. If Húrin is still alive, he negates the leader points. Here can you read it off for me, Matt?
Yeah, you might as
Sure,
well
okay.
read it, Matt. At this point.
If the
It's
leader
been
of
a
your
rough
army,
day, guys. It's been a rough day.
So then the rule is line of command. If the leader of your army is a Gondor hero, then whilst Húrin the Tall is alive and on the battlefield, your opponent cannot score victory points for slaying the enemy leader. And it's that last clause that's the important one, because you still can get victory points scored against you for getting your leader wounded. You just do not get the victory points scored against you for having your leader die.
And that's a really good rule. I mean, if you bring somebody like Denethor, and it fits the theme quite well, because of course Denethor is going to die once you throw him in combat, but you'll only give the opponent maybe 1 victory point instead of 3. So he has that rule. And what is the other rule with the reroll?
In defense of the king. So for this rule, whilst he is within 3 inches of either Denethor or Aragorn, King Elessar, Húrin gains the Fearless special rule and may reroll a single d6 when making a dual roll. And just in case it gets asked, that does in fact stack with the banner.
Okay, and he's 85 base or 85 with the horse.
He's 80 base, 90 with the horse.
Okay, so right off the bat, Húrin is a beast, in my opinion, and you see him at many tournaments in the U.S. and I'm sure abroad, at any point system, and he's a hero of Valor as well, correct? Or is he?
He's Hero of Valor.
It's Valor.
Yeah. So right off the bat, you have a model that's about 90 points, can lead 15 models thrown in Rangers or cheap anything, Knights with lances. So he's a really good take. You see him a lot accompanied with Faramir, Boromir, Denethor, even Aragorn in some instances, and you'll also see him allied in with the likes of Rohan or the Fiefdoms. But I really like him. I think he's a hunk. He kills stuff really well. But I think for players that want to bring him, be careful because he is soft. The model doesn't look soft, and the profile doesn't look soft. But boy, is he soft. I've come against him many times where I've killed him in shooting because he has 1 fate, 2 wounds at d6. I've also come across him many times using him where I'll fail 2 dice, 3 with a charge, but let's say 2 dice against another hero, and you roll crap. You maybe roll a 1 or a 2, and you don't want to blow all your might to get up to the 6 or even the 5, and he can die like that. Or let alone he can get 1 wound, and on the second wound, say you roll a fate roll and you get a 1 and you have to blow all his might. So he's really good at any point system. I know you guys will probably have stuff to say about him. I really, really like bringing him, and I really like seeing him at tournaments just for everything he does. And some of his tools, as Matt read, are kind of minor, and you don't know they're there until kind of the end of the game or in a silly chance. You're like, oh yeah, I get two extra dice rolls to here for like two banners, the banner and my special rule. So yeah, he's really good, but be careful when you play him because he is quite squishy if you don't use him well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I mean, there's not really a whole lot to add to this guy. I mean, obviously he is what he is. I mean, yeah, I think he's absolutely worth taking. Just remember the scenarios you're in, because you obviously play him different in, like, let's say domination, where killing the leader doesn't even matter. But I mean, the best part is, even outside of his special rule, he operates as an excellent troop killer, +1 to wound. In my mind, the separation of good to great heroes is that +1 to wound factor. Anytime I see burly, mastercrafted weapons, anything like that, +1 to wound is huge. It's like +3 strength. It's really, really effective. So
I think his Fight 5 separates him too from the
Yeah.
pack.
Yeah,
Because it
absolutely.
gives him the ability to heroic combat against Fight 4 troops that many, as we'll see when we're talking about Gondor heroes, doesn't have.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say just because of how squishy he is, definitely don't hesitate to spend his might to, start killing troops off. He can really swing a game if he kills like 4 or 5 models just alone. Like, I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but like as he starts chomping through a flank or something like that, like he can really swing a battle. So
And he's not one that you want to save. I know there's a lot of Gondor heroes you want to save their might for heroic moves and stuff. Nah, spend his resources till it's too late because he's going to die.
yeah, he will die every game.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why you tend not to want Húrin as your primary killer. If he's going to be the if that second tier hero is going to be the primary killer, I think you really want Faramir, if for no other reason than the extra fate and the 2 extra will. But if you're depending on Húrin, is like he's a great kind of backup guy. He's the guy that runs around next to Aragorn or runs around near Denethor and gets a bunch of kills as long as you have other people doing stuff. But the times I've seen people kind of get in trouble with Húrin are when people take Húrin and they're like, yeah, this is the guy who's going to get all of my kills, because he doesn't. If he's the guy that the enemy caster is going to focus on, he's not going to give you much because his 1 will be gone, and then you won't have much to do with him.
Fortunately, you end up seeing that work out naturally because most lists where I've seen Húrin in often have Boromir or Aragorn as the leader. So it ends up where you end up having dual threats anyway. I've very rarely seen it where Denethor is the leader. Not to say like that's a bad idea. It's a great idea, but I just don't see it. So most of the time he is paired up with another solid hero.
Yeah, Denethor, Boromir, and Húrin are a great combination because he's the second tier killer, and he gets the special rule by hanging around Denethor.
So I can only speak for myself, but I think a lot of people will at least have the same opinion. I try to get Húrin as my secondary hero a lot of times when making a Minas Tirith list. Do you guys kind of like when you make a list? Let's say you try to take Boromir. Is Húrin the second hero you try to fit into that list, or is he kind of just like less of a let's say auto include? Is he less of an auto include for you, or is he kind of?
I wouldn't call him an auto include. It's really depends on what you're trying to do with your list. I mean, he's built for, I don't want to say specific lists. I mean, he works in a wide range of lists, but he's not an auto include. I think the problem is Gondor just has so much stuff that they can work with that you end up like having options. I think he's a fantastic addition to the game in the sense that he is just a great option, but not an auto include. He's not something like you're gambling for Rohan or anything. Like he's not like that. So
Matt H, do you see him a lot in Texas? I'm just curious what the meta is there for Minas Tirith.
So most of the time when I play in Texas, I see Boromir and they bring Irolas with Boromir. When I tend to see Húrin is when I'm seeing Gandalf the White, which I don't know pairs too well, but that's the way I usually see it. I have Húrin, and just most of the time he just doesn't make the list because he is squishy, because he doesn't have that heroic defense. You'll opt for someone else who can go tie someone up with the bodyguard special rule and then call a defense and keep the Balrog busy for a little bit longer than Húrin can. So
you see Balrog a lot in your community?
Unfortunately, and I think now that this new
it's going to grow a little bit larger,
even more.
Which I have a rant for later on in the episode.
That should be on every podcast, a Balrog rant now.
And I don't think he's overpowered, Matt. I think he's unfun. That's big difference between not fun. It's like Smaug, not overpowered, just not fun. That's my Balrog rant.
Tournament 101.
I think we're going to rename this the Anti-Balrog Podcast.
But we digress.
It's about to jump down that rabbit hole. So thanks for pulling me back, man.
Okay. So the next model we're going to move on to is Ingold, and I'll move that over to Devin.
All right. So I don't have this guy in front of me as far as the book. So Matt,
do you want me to read through here?
Well, I'll go through it all except for Resolute Fighter, in which case you can read that.
All right.
But from what Matt told me earlier, Okay. He's 65 points. He's fight 4, strength 4, defense 7, 2 wounds, 2 attacks, courage 4, 3/1/1 for Might Will Fate, and then he's got heroic defense and strike, and he's got heavy armor, sword, shield. He's got the shield wall special rule, and resolute fighter. Which, before I go into my whole analysis of Ingold, Matt, what is resolute fighter?
All right. Ingold and friendly Gondor warrior models within 3 inches of Ingold do not back away if they lose the fight. Their opponent must back away instead. Exclamation point.
There you go. All right. So now, for those who have seen it, there's also an FAQ on this guy. All right. Now, Matt, do you have the FAQ in front of you?
Yeah, let me pull that up. All right.
That's literally holding like this whole podcast on his shoulders.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Thanks,
but
Matt, for being here.
How is that different? So, question: Ingold's resolute fighter special rule states that he doesn't back away. Does this mean he cannot be trapped? Answer: no. Even though Ingold doesn't back away, he will still count as being trapped for the purposes of doubling strikes and other special rules that require a model to be trapped.
Thank you, Matt, for being prepared for me. So, basically, all right. So the interpretation of that FAQ, before I go into everything, it almost, if you read it literally, it can almost feel like it means, or is intended to mean, he's always trapped at all times if he ever doesn't back away. Because technically, by the definition of trapped, and probably have to go into the whole analysis of what it says specifically, but if you don't back away, you are trapped, which he's not backing away, so therefore he is trapped, and this FAQ allows him to be trapped, so he's always trapped if he uses a special rule. I don't think that's intended, mostly because I have seen comments of Jay kind of trying to clarify this. In fact, this FAQ, I remember being a huge discussion of confusion as soon as it came out regarding this. And I think it's only intended to mean like if you support him like with a pike wall, or like if he would have been trapped under normal circumstances, then now he's trapped. So that's how I would recommend playing it. But if it causes some confusion in your community, I completely understand. Regardless of that,
just so I'm clear about how to interpret this, because I think the way this is supposed to do it is, so if Ingold loses a fight, go through the routine of trying to back him away, and if he can back away, he is not trapped. If he can't back away, he is trapped. Then once you've kind of done that routine, take all the figures and move them back to where they started, and continue to play the game. Is that how you play it?
I don't play it like, basically without the actual movement part.
If there's obviously if you're just looking at it and he's, it's just him fighting one other guy, you don't have to do this. But
yeah.
If you're in a complicated situation where it's not clear if he would be trapped, if he were anyone but Ingold, I think that's what you have to do. You have to go through and measure to make sure to determine if he is or could or could not back away.
Yeah.
And if he could back away, he is not trapped. If he couldn't back away, he is trapped. But then after you've kind of done all those machinations, you just put everybody back where they would have been and resolve it.
And then have your opponent back away.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, have your opponent back away.
It's an FAQ that causes a little more confusion than I think it would probably be just better off with the rule it had, which is he basically almost can't be trapped unless knocked down. I liked it like that, but hey, yeah, you can do it like that if you want to check if he's actually trapped and move him out the way. I think that's probably the best way to do it if you want to do it like in a tournament, especially on top tables. So yeah, I don't do that personally, but then again, I don't play Ingold very much, so. From the times I have played this against this guy, you know what? He is solid at what he does. He is very clearly an objective holder. He is someone who's not going to move off of the objective. Extremely thematic to what the intent of, his lore and everything like that. So, something you should note, he's not real effective at doing much else. He is a person who is just meant to hold the line and not die. And so if you're going against that Balrog in Matt H's league, then he's great. So heroic defense, heroic strike, he has what he needs to hold the line. And that's just what he does. I don't think I've ever seen anything unique out of this guy. I almost feel like I shield with him more often than strike because he's just not killing very much.
Yeah.
The 3 might on him is more of a like for heroic moves or those heroic defense, heroic strike if he needs it. I think if you're pairing heroic strike, the fact that he has that, I think the only reason I'd end up using it is I've completely surrounded a target. But otherwise, heroic defense is probably going to be his go-to option if he's dealing with like an Azog or something like that. I don't think he's going for the kill. 65 points for a hero of fortitude is excellent. I mean, that's realistically my take on him. I mean, would I take him in a Gondor list? I think absolutely. I think he has a lot of places. If Tim asked, no, it's not an auto include. I don't think he is either. So,
No, I wasn't going to ask
He's got
that. What are you
his
talking
notes
about? No, of course not. No. Who would ask such a thing?
so, and the other interesting note is he has shield wall, which is very good considering he doesn't back away. So you only need 1 row rather than 2 rows of where's Minas Tirith, and he can go to defense 8. So that's what his job is, to survive, which in this game actually is not a bad job to have.
Yeah, I feel like he plays quite opposite to Húrin in the sense where you want to conserve his might to an extent, because exactly what Devin said, you could use him to heroic march, or not, no, he can't heroic march, heroic move in the end of the game, or heroic defense against, say, an Azog Bolg or Aragorn. But I also like the option of saving his might, because I played against this pesky sucker, and I'm like, you're still alive. Just go to sleep, brother. Like, what are you doing here? Like, the fight for, I'd say, though, makes him kind of not really effective at killing stuff. But yeah, I've seen my opponent before save his might, and then towards the end of the game, he might have 1 or 2 might, and he'll throw him against one of your mega heroes, and he'll heroic strike, and then he'll get the heroic strike off. You have to spend your might to heroic strike back against him. I know he's really effective against certain heroes that you see a lot, like Eomer type models, who are going to need a 6 to wound him, and him having 2 wounds and a fate. It's going to come hard, especially when you can heroic strike against Eomer, and the Eomer player knows he has to heroic strike or else he's going to like lose basically. So I like him. Again, back to Tim, like Tim, he's not an auto include. So, Tim,
Who said
Tim, you're
that?
like,
I don't know. I didn't hear anyone say that. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're like that guy at the restaurant. Would you like to make that a large?
It's only 40 cents, sir.
Yeah. Hero fortitude. It's so worth it. It's so worth it.
He's only an extra 5 points, sir. You can really fit him into your meal deal.
No, but yeah, I like him. It depends on how you want to build, because his lack of heroic march, you use him as a role as most people are going to use a captain, but like the lack of heroic march makes your army a little less effective. I don't know. What do you think, Matt H?
No, I agree. He has a niche purpose, or a niche purpose, however you say that. And the fact that he's compared to the next profile we'll talk about that has bodyguard and has march, he just never makes it into my list, ever.
So this is an interesting one, the next profile, because I know that Matt Iverson specifically has been talking about how much he likes this profile. So I'm interested to hear Matt's point on Irolas. So I'll move that over to Matt.
Well, I do like Irolas, but before I get there, I guess I would want to put in one last pitch for Ingold. And I think Devin kind of hit on it a bit, although perhaps didn't harp on it quite as much, of the single line shield wall. As we'll talk when we get to the Warriors, kind of the most cost-efficient use of points for Minas Tirith can be the front line of Minas Tirith Warriors with shield, and then the back line of Rangers with spear to back them up and give them fight 4. And Ingold is great to kind of sit in the middle of that line, as Devin said, and make sure that front line keeps defense 7 because it doesn't back up. And that's kind of his primary use, is to sit in the front of a shield wall and just make sure everybody's getting that shield wall bonus. And I think that's where you get your best use out of him. But with that said, I do think probably Irolas is a better use of 65 points in most armies. He is move 6. You cannot get him a horse. He is fight 5, so he's better than your average hero. He's strength 4, defense 6, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 4, 3 might, 1 will, 1 fate. It's heavy armor and sword. No shield, which is interesting considering one of his special abilities we'll talk about in a moment. He can have heroic march and heroic defense. And he has the bodyguard special rule. And his other special rules: defend the White City. Irolas may use the shielding special rule, even though he is not armed with a shield. If Irolas elects to shield and wins the ensuing fight, he may make a single strength 4 strike against one enemy model from the same fight. So Irolas has 2 uses. The first is he can be your heroic march in the list, and because he's got 3 might, he can do it 3 times. So he is, as we discussed last time, the alternative to Madril in some lists. He loses the ability to influence where people come on in the Maelstrom of Battle special rule, but he still, if you take Irolas, you do not need to take a captain in order to get march in your list. And you can march 3 times. The other thing that he brings to the table that Madril very much does not bring is his ability to tank, because he's got heroic defense. He can call it 3 times. He can walk into your hero. He can then call heroic defense, shield to get 4 attacks. And if he does win the fight, then he gets 1 strength 4 attack, which does not sound all that great unless he is fighting, say, a guy on a horse, in which case that really causes the other guy to have to think, do I spend the might in order to win against the shielding guy, or else I risk losing my horse? And Irolas is a great way to go into especially mounted big hitter heroes and just kind of suck their might away to try and get them to win fights, and then probably have him still be around the turn afterwards, because he's forcing the other big hitter hero to spend a point of might or 2 points of might to win a fight where they're only going to be wounding the guy on a 6 and may not do any damage to him at all. So he's a great way to kind of drain might points from the other guy's big hitter. And I think those 2 roles in combination that make either him or Madril an auto-include in a Minas Tirith list. Tim, to preempt your question, I think your Minas Tirith list should have one or the other of these guys. Depending on how you want to fight the list is how you choose which one to take.
Yeah, I totally agree on all those points. Like he brings so many tools to the fight that you just don't know about, because his profile doesn't look that threatening. But the fight 5 for me is the real kicker, and the heroic march. I'm in the camp of, if I go up against him, I'm prioritize killing him and shooting before combat starts, just because all the tools that he brings and the plans that he can mess up slightly with his little special rules.
Okay, so
And I think, just to harp one more time on the bodyguard, I don't know about you guys, but I'm starting to see more and more tear, especially like with the new Black Riders list and everything. Having bodyguard for a last minute stand fast or being able to get in and tie people up is just amazing on a hero.
I guess
All right.
for those who might ask it, I don't think there's no reason to play Ingold. I guess I'll go in defense of Ingold here if you're really looking for like just want to clarify, because I'm like, oh man, we just convinced everyone to throw their Ingold away or permanently shelve him. The only defense I can say for Ingold is if you want a hero that just won't die, or well, not won't die, he will die, but like not as easily as Ingold. Defense 6 is one of the easiest defense lines for a hero that to chop him through, which we mentioned with Húrin. The fact that you can go to that base defense 7 and then possibly defense 8. Not to say he will survive all encounters. I mean, he's only 2 wounds, 1 fate. So yeah, he's still like a captain at the end of the day. But if you are looking for someone who just will survive and at least discourage your opponent from trying to kill this hero, Ingold can be an interesting option. But yeah, unfortunately, Irolas does have a lot more utility. So,
now I know it depends on the list, and I know we're talking about how Irolas and both Madril and him are both very good profiles. Do you have a tendency to go with one or the other, or do you try to fit both into a list?
probably not both.
Just one or the other, usually.
And which one do you guys tend to go with?
Well, once again, I think it depends. So, like, if you have a list that's like a wide list, let's say, like you have a lot of different warbands, I think Madril's going to serve more function, right? If you have Denethor in your list, Majorel is going to serve more function. If you have, and for those who don't understand why I said that, Denethor being your army leader and having 0 might means he can't control where he goes on the board, and he's dictating your whole battlefield. Giving him plus minus to come on the board is great for Maelstrom. So, I think the composition of your list is going to dictate whether or not Madril becomes more useful. If you have Boromir or Aragorn, and then your next warband is like, let's say, Húrin, who doesn't need his might all that much, well, then Irolas starts to become more attractive, right? Because Madril's purpose isn't really fulfilling what you need. So I think, just from my perspective, and then also one last thing is the list that we reviewed. He has 6 warbands. So that's what I mean by a wide list. So, the more warbands you have, Madril starts increasing in his effectiveness. Also, if your list is designed to shoot your opponent off the table, once again, Madril is starting to increase in his effectiveness, having a bow plus 3 points of might. So that's...
Yeah.
And if you're in a 6-game tournament, I mean, you're almost guaranteed to see Maelstrom at least once, if not twice.
Right.
If it's a 3-game tournament, probably not the right thing, but I'm probably taking Irolas. If it's a 6-game, I'm taking Madril.
Yeah. The other thing to think about is, and I think Devin was alluding to this, if you've got a lot of those kind of 1 might minor heroes in your list, the Damrods, the Anboran Mablungs, the Baragons, Madril becomes more important because it is really risky in a Maelstrom scenario to have, one of those guys and his 6 friends end up right in the middle of the, Gothmog and his 18 orcs. Whereas if your list is, Boromir, Irolas, and Ingold, each with, full up warbands or big chunky warbands, that's a lot less important to have Madril along, and I think that's where you take Irolas. And I guess the other thing to think about is points. At lower points levels, you may well want the couple extra guys that you get by taking Madril and Kyrian instead of Irolas and Ingold.
Okay. Any final thoughts?
All right. Seems like we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Where's Mick? All right, I'm going to have to start
Exactly,
disagreeing
right?
because Mick's not here.
Now we're going to move on to the warriors of Minas Tirith, and later on we'll go over the siege weapons as well. But to start off, we'll start off with what you'll see in almost every single Minas Tirith army, which is the warriors of Minas Tirith, and I'll move that over to Matt H.
All right. So for some reason, every time I look at these guys, I think of Star Trek. When you see the guy with the red shirt all by himself, he's going to die horribly. When you see a Minas Tirith warrior by himself, that always comes to mind. So here we go. We've got a base cost of 7 points. These guys have move 6, fight 3, hit on a 4+, strength 3, defense 5, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 3. And I'll just say, always keep in mind the Minas Tirith army bonus. If you're going Green Alliance, you get a +1 on that. They come with heavy armor and sword. You can kit them out with a war horn, a banner, a bow for 1 point, a shield for 1 point, a spear for 1 point, and they have the special rule shield wall. So what do you guys think about these guys?
I think shield wall put them back on the map. As far as because before, what was it? Before this edition, it was Fountain Court Guard or nothing. I don't know what else you brought in Minas Tirith. But unless Horde Gondor. So you would do it that way. But obviously now these guys, you can tell that shield wall was granted to them to give them a little bit more function. I personally like them. I think I actually still kit a lot of my lists around them, mostly if I'm trying to get more numbers into my list, especially with Gondor, where having numbers is really a pain in the butt because you're getting these defense 7 shield wall guys. I think that against Fountain Court Guard, I think you're still seeing people bring hordes of Fountain Court Guard over them. But yeah, no, I personally like them. I don't know. Is there anyone here who doesn't like them?
They get the job done. If you want an 8-point model that goes up to defense 7,
Yeah.
that's quite, even for heroes like, let me give an example, like Glorfindel, coming up across a shield line of that, he's not going to heroic combat through that like butter. It's a huge frustration for myself and when I played it against my opponents, where It sucks. It's like that episode where we talked about the dwarf basic warriors with shield. Just for a low point cost, you get so much.
They're like the Swiss Army knife. Is there a better spoon? Yes, but when you really need it in a tight pinch, the Swiss Army knife spoon is useful.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing them in more and more lists as just kind of like the base good infantry figure.
Mhm.
And even if it's not a Minas Tirith list, I'm seeing them get allied into lots of other lists where somebody's like, well, I need the front rank of a shield wall. Who am I going to use? Oh, these guys, because they're a cheap solution that easily allies into lots of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's nothing complicated to say about this profile. I mean, this is the base profile that you almost feel like the rest of the game is modeled off of. I mean, otherwise, I guess the only thing I can say is you probably won't see these guys with a bow too often.
That's what I was actually just going to ask. When do you guys find a use for the bows for the regular warriors of Minas Tirith, or the Rangers or Citadel Guard? Just why would you not take those over the warriors of Minas Tirith?
I've actually found a really good use for the bows. If you cut it off, it makes a great pose for holding a spear and a shield.
Well,
Go.
let me be Mick on this and say no. There's a use for the bows. I mean, the advantage that you get with a bow is, I mean, your defense 5. So you are against foot bows. You're or ordinary foot bows, not elven bows. You're cutting the casualties you receive from folks in half. And to a certain extent, I think I think you end up winning a gun duel against, say, Rangers on the other side, because they're both 8 points a figure. The Rangers will hit slightly more often, but the Warriors of Minas Tirith with bows will die half as often.
I'm wondering if it's slightly. I want to know the statistics on this. This is where Mick is good at this, because like slightly, I mean, it's 66% hitting versus 50%.
So it's 16.5% as opposed to, going from.
I mean, I kind of want to know what the metrics is if you roll like 20 dice. And then, like how many more hits is that? This is where Mick came in on a podcast. That's the only reason I invited him on it, actually.
Jeez, where is he when you're
well, I'm glad I could be of some use here, because I've got my little statistics all written down.
Oh, thank
there
God.
we go.
Yeah,
see, there's a reason he got invited.
All right, Mick, you're fired. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
I have a purpose.
If you're listening, you're gone now.
Yeah.
Okay, so here, let's just go to wound. If you're wounding on a 5+, or excuse me, if you're hitting on a 5+, now this thing's confusing me. I'm blowing my chance in the spotlight. If you're hitting on a 4+, and you need a 3+ to wound, this percentages is all messed up. You guys will have to cut this out. I'll have to relook at this.
Well, not a 3+ to wound, a 4+ to wound.
I'm looking at
either a 5+ to wound or a
my matrix is all screwed up. So
sorry, Mick, you're back on the podcast.
All right, next.
Yeah.
Ignore what I said. Ignore what I said, Mick.
Yeah.
I mean, basically on 20 dice, I mean, I guess you'll hit like instead of 10 dice, you'll hit maybe 14. I guess I don't know. I'm trying to like math it out, but I guess. Yeah, the return fire, to Matt's point, is important. It's an interesting factor. Like, okay, your guys won't die as often. And I think that's probably another point that has to be factored into this, which Matt was bringing up, is the fact that you have 5 defense instead of 4. So against another strength 2 shooting army, you actually can win the bow war essentially against them. I guess the only time this doesn't matter as much as if you have Gandalf, but I mean, I would say there's no reason to take the bow. It's just more rare. I think people are definitely favoring the 3-up accuracy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing you get out of the Rangers is fight 4.
Yeah.
But the other thing to think about here, and I'm not sure I've ever tried this, but it can be done, is to throw a shield on the guys with the bows, and or throw a shield and a spear on the guys with the bows.
Technically, like a shield wall. Yeah.
Yeah, because they have shield wall.
It's like when you see Uruk-hai crossbowmen take shields, even though they don't. It's
so they're basically 9-point bowmen at 6 defense. If being shot at.
if being shot at.
What's
Well,
the rule though if you're holding both? If you have a bow and a shield?
you don't get the defense bonus from the shield, but if you have like 3 of these guys and they're all touching each other,
The shield wall
then they
should kick into effect.
shield wall kicks
interesting.
into effect, so that brings
Yeah.
you up to it brings you up to defense 6.
That's a good call.
There's an interesting argument that if you shoot the bow, I would want to see the wording if you actually forfeit the shield entirely for the round, which means then you would want to shoot second. But I don't know if that's actually how that
So,
interaction works.
That's a good point, though. If you took them with shields and their defense 6 with the 4+ shoot and strength 2 bows, are they much more valuable now, or is it just kind of like there's 9 points there? I'd rather take something else.
Well, they're definitely valuable. I mean, now at 9 points,
Because if you took the shield and make them defense 6, where even elves need 6s to wound.
trying to think of another model in the game that has 6 defense at 9 points with a bow. Trying to think of through dwarves, and I don't think there's really.
No, it is dwarves. It is dwarf warrior.
Dwarf warrior with a bow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
They have strength 3 bows in 18-inch range though.
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
okay. So distance. Yeah.
So it's like kind of still a variable, but I mean, it's. I guess I've never tested it. So
I mean, it's something to think about. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do with the Warrior of Minas Tirith that I don't think people have explored necessarily as much, and it's probably worth doing. I mean, is it worth bringing them up to 10 points, throwing the spear on, and just having them be the second rank of your shield wall? Or some of them, mix them in with the shield and spear guys and kind of shoot out of that shield wall, because at that point, not only are they defense 6 if you're shooting back at them, but there's a defense 7 in the way when you're shooting back at them.
yeah.
So I don't know, just something to consider.
I really like that point, though, Matt, with the shield wall, how, like, even though you don't have the shield out, you get the shield wall benefits. So very good take on the making them more useful. We're going to move on to the next warrior, which is the Knight of Minas Tirith. So I'll move that over to Rainier.
All right, so the Knight of Minas Tirith, I'm a real big fan of him. He is 13 points base. Basic is fight 3, strength 3, d5, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 3. So the same thing as a warrior, just on a horse. He also has the shield wall. You can even add a shield to him to make him 14 points. So you basically have a 14-point warrior of Minas Tirith with a lance galloping. I'm a huge fan of these guys for 2 reasons. The first, of course, is they're cheap objective grabbers and reconnaissance. You come up a game like Reconnoiter and you have a few of them go. I mean, 14 points, 13 if you don't bring a shield. They get shot or someone deploys a whole warband to stop them. You're getting quite a lot of bang for your 14 points. Second, whenever I build a competitive tournament, I usually don't do too much cavalry because I want them for objective grabbers. For these guys in a Gondor list, I would throw quite a few in, actually, just because.
How many are you talking?
I'm talking like 6 or 8.
Dozen.
A
6 or
dozen?
8 dozen, yeah.
No, 6 or 8 dozen.
Oh.
Yeah, 6 or 8 dozen with five
your
of
casual
the dwarf
72 plus.
ballistas too.
You want to represent the movie of Faramir's Charge. That's
right.
Yeah,
that's like-
you got your buddy eating like a pig in the corner, and then your other buddy singing an opera.
For new players listening, don't do that. You will lose your games.
Yeah.
One point I want to bring up, though, about the Warriors of Minas Tirith, or I'm sorry, the Knights of Minas Tirith. If you take Boromir and they are within range, they become fight 4. And for me personally, they are the best cheap cav in the game at that point when they're within range of Boromir. Because now you have a fight 4 model on the charge with a lance at defense 6 with a shield at 14 points. And a lot of people consider the Serpent Riders at 13 points the best. But if Boromir's in range, that 1 point they're absolutely better than the Serpent Riders. I think you try to keep them around. If you have Boromir on your list with the banner, you try to keep these knights around them as much as possible because then they're incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and we just talked about like the benefits of a basic Warrior of Minas Tirith. I mean, worst comes to shove, your knight gets shot, his horse gets shot, and now you have a D7, D6, but like realistically D7 with your army guy just roaming around, being a pain in the butt. I like them too, even without Boromir, because 13 to 14 points, you're going to throw this guy into a battle line. It's like, okay, maybe I waste 13 points, but if your opponent rolls bad, even if he's fight 4, that knight's going to cut through like warrior, like other units really easily. So yeah, I think there's so much that they can bring, especially with all the heroes that we're talking about. You're going to have your heroes all around the battlefield, many of which have heroic strike or are fight 5 or have these special abilities, and just the knights complement the list so well just for what they do to get a big punch out of a basic cavalry unit is very good.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I mean, obviously, I bring absolutely 4 of these guys. I would say probably 3 at the minimum. I think in almost every Gondor list, even the list review, we mentioned, hey, why don't you just add a few of these guys in? They're excellent utility units, and just for the base cost that you're getting, the fact that they have a lance, once again, that +1 to wound is huge. And that's, to Tim's point, the reason Serpent riders are actually considered the best is the fight 4. It's pointless to have a lance if you're losing the fight, right? Well, around Boromir, they not only get a banner bonus, but they go to fight 4. And yeah, they become probably the most cost-effective cavalry in the game, considering their defense 6 on the while mounted. So, I mean, yeah, I absolutely love this profile. I think it's great. And I think the only reason you don't bring more of them is because of the 40 mil base. So for the newer players listening to this, why don't you bring more is really that. The 40 mil base prevents them from realistically, you can basically, your opponent can get like 4 models to your 1 in the combats, and that can become devastating to you, and it's really hard to kind of fit your army through it. But yeah, when you have like 4 to 6 of these guys, it's perfect for flanking and what you need to do.
And end of game, if you're broken and you're trying to stay on that objective, if you've got your army bonus, 72% of the time you're passing your courage test with these guys. Yeah. So I mean, they're okay to leave by themselves, and they'll hold that objective.
If only we could get skinnier horses for them.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure I could fit that horse model on a 25 mil base.
He just has to put like all of his hooves together and just kind of stand there.
They create a rule: if it fits, it fits. Okay, yeah, I think everybody agrees. Pretty solid model. Now we're going to get into a model that's a little controversial. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to go over the Ranger, and then we'll go to a controversial model. So for the Ranger, I'll move it over to Rainier again. So the Ranger of Gondor.
So this one, like you mentioned, is not controversial.
Yes.
This is, I would say, probably outside of the Fountain Court Guard, one of the most, cost-efficient models that you can bring in a Gondor list, and it gives so much to the army. So for starters, you're getting a Fight 4 model that can hit on 3s with a bow. They're automatically, for 8 points, they automatically come with a bow, 1 point for an upgrade with a spear. Typical Fight 3 D4, 1 attack, 1 wound, and courage 3. So you see these, of course, we've talked many times about the Ranger list, pure Legion list, how dangerous it is. But I even think if you bring this with a like a themed Minas Tirith list or a themed Osgiliath list or just a straight Gondor list, they can do quite a lot. At 9 points, you're getting a model that hits on 3 with a spear support of Fight 4. And that, in my opinion, that's where they shine the most, because the soft Fight 4 is kind of squishy, even in shooting, and especially combat. But I don't know, 9 points for a spear support model that can hit on 3 like that, that's crazy, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm going to say for what you guys have to say, but it's very similar, just probably similar. They're just really good models for their points.
I mean, I'll go out on a limb and say that the way to construct a Minas Tirith battle line these days is Warriors of Minas Tirith in front, Rangers of Gondor with spear in back. And that's the most efficient way to put together a Minas Tirith list. And I mean, because you're at that point, it's basically 17 points a file. for what ends up being, fight 4. And it shoots with a 3+.
And if you have Boromir, once again, this is compounding on it. It's not a fight 5 back.
Yeah, then it's elves.
Yeah,
Yep.
you basically have an elven line.
Elf spear support for like 9 points. That's
Yep.
Okay, so I don't think anybody disagrees. Very, very solid profile. Very good. Move on to what I was about to say was controversial, which is the Citadel Guard. So we'll focus first on without any upgrades, and then we'll talk about the upgrades real quick. So before we do that, I'll move that over to Matt H.
All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
These guys have kind of a niche use, and that's when you build your Minas Tirith army exactly as Matt I stated. When you maximize your bow count and you still need a few spear support that give you fight 4, you use these guys. So the Citadel Guards, they're move 6, fight 4, hit on a 4+, strength 3, defense 5, attacks 1, wound 1, courage 3. They're 9 points base. They've got heavy armor, sword, and spear to start with. You can give them a horse, and you can swap the spear for a longbow. And for 1 point. They do have the bodyguard special rule. So these guys, I always toy around with it. I love the idea of like max spamming them in the back line, but every time I build a list, I wind up using Rangers instead, and these guys just make up for when I hit my bow limit. They fill in the rest of the gaps. Love the concept, but the fact that they don't have shield wall or cannot take a shield and are only defense 5 compared to a Ranger who's defense 4, it just seems like they always wind up falling out of my list. What do you guys think?
It's actually kind of interesting when you do a direct comparison with the Rangers. It almost, to anyone looking at it, almost feels like, well, why not take more of these guys? Because, like, you have the Ranger of Gondor. For 1 point more, you get an extra defense and bodyguard, which means theoretically they're getting bodyguard for free in direct comparison with the Ranger of Gondor. So is it worth that extra point to not only get a longbow instead of a regular bow, which is now strength 3, but also have the bodyguard special rule? There is almost an interesting argument to be made that getting a Citadel Guard with a bow could be, for 10 points, more cost efficient than 9-point Ranger of Gondor. What do you guys think about that?
So
I just think the fact that they have to give up their spear in doing so makes it a little tough. But
oh yeah, that's I guess yeah. Sorry, I completely left that out.
I think
it would be great except for that point.
Yeah, that point.
I think they negate the idea that we're toying with just a regular Minas Tirith warrior with bow, and I say that because for 1 point more, you could get a strength 3, which does a ton of damage. I like them personally. I've played them in just fun themey lists with my friends, and I'm like, oh, actually, these guys are pretty strong. And actually, Rob Cron, who was on the show some few weeks past, he uses them, and I don't know. What do you guys think about them on horse too? Because he's used them with horse.
So there's 16 points on horse. Obviously, they're defense 5. However, I think I can only speak for what I would do, but I think you only take them on horse if Boromir is around the banner, because then they're fight 5 on the charge, and then it makes them much more. Because 16 points, I'd much rather have a regular warrior of Minas Tirith with lance and shield for 14 points than these guys for 16, unless Boromir's around, and then I definitely start to consider them more because of the fight 5.
It is worth having a couple of these guys, because I actually have a bunch of these guys converted to be on horse. I mean, that was back in the old edition when they could use their spears while mounted, so they were great for backing up Aragorn with a spear.
Can you not do that anymore? Because actually, I was about to mention that.
Yeah, I think you can't.
Can we actually look that up? Because
it has to be an equal or smaller size base.
But see, that's the thing, though.
Yeah,
they are
it is an
equal size
base.
base. So I was about to mention that, because when you mentioned Boromir, I'm like, there's this hidden purpose behind these guys. I would always bring equivalent to the number of heroes you have mounted, like if you're kind of wanted structure lift like that, because they can spear support your heroes. They're the only model in the game that can do that, other than Rangers of the North, which they're too cost point.
Right. I'll have to go look that up. I had in my head that you could no longer spear support mounted models, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
I think the only restriction is base size.
I think Devin might be right on this, actually. I think I remember, because there's very few models in the game that have a spear.
There's no other model except for the Ranger of the North. They're the only two that have a spear while mounted. They're the only two. And so that's why actually, like, I do find myself bringing like one to, to spear support Boromir or Aragorn or whatnot.
I was going to say, then take back everything I said. The other use they do have is as objective holders, because they can get a longbow and have bodyguards. So they are somewhat more useful than Minas Tirith Knights to run off someplace where they can just then sit behind a tree and plink with their longbow, knowing that as long as your general is on the board, they are never going to run away.
Okay, so I guess final question. So, are you a fan of Ranger of Gondor or Citadel Guard with bow? Which one are you going to?
Ranger of Gondor.
Yeah, Ranger of Gondor because of the spear. I forgot completely they have to swap the spear out, and so that is now it's no longer points efficient at all, and you're losing the spear support.
Is the strength 3 bow plus the fact that you're defense 5 with bodyguard, so not only can you hold objectives from back and shoot people down, but you also, it's much harder to kill you from being shot at. So you do more damage shooting and you take less damage shooting. Does that not have a big factor just because, I'm not saying the spear isn't invaluable, but
You're definitely making these guys your frontline option at that point, because the thing about it is if you get, like, let's say 33% of these guys, let's just say you did that. Mm-hmm. Well, if you put them in the back rank, then that means they no longer can support once the battle line meets. So they have to walk around in order to get to your opponent. So that's a problem that the Rangers don't have to deal with. And terrain can sometimes mean where you have to fight as a battle line. So a lot of times the terrain will dictate that. So if you put them in the front rank, then now you have a defense 5 front rank. Once again, a problem that the Rangers don't have to deal with. They can be in the back rank. So I think that if you're okay with the defense 5 front rank, maybe you have
50-50.
What do you mean 50-50? You mean
so like back rank Rangers of Gondor, front rank Citadel Guard with bows. And you have defense 5.
Do that. I mean, because you were comparing the Citadel Guard with a longbow to the Ranger of Gondor.
Yeah, well, I guess I was saying, as a whole, would you rather have one or the other? But at the same time, would you rather take 50-50?
Well, you couldn't, because now you're 100% bows.
No. But let's say you take a third of your army. You take 6 with 6 Citadel Guard in the front, 6 Rangers of Gondor in the back.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
You still have a third bows, but half of the bows are one, half of the bows are the other.
It's not a terrible idea to do that, given the bodyguard. And I think
bodyguard defense 5 too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I don't think that Citadel Guard should never be taken at all. I think that the Rangers are more cost efficient and provide the spear support that you need to solve all those problems. But the bodyguard. If you do not, it's really the next profile we're going to review. That, like, if you don't take the longbow, then the next profile is probably the better option. But if you do, then yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against a 50-50 just to get sprinkled in that bodyguard. I think it's not a bad option. You just don't want too many to prevent your battle line from being like totally overwhelmed. Because you just won't get those spears. Otherwise, though, I think there's a great argument for taking them mounted. They can tag ring raise or whatnot. They actually fulfill an interesting purpose while mounted with a longbow, even.
Actually, and we'll make this the last part about the Citadel Guard. After the point of if they can support and they are surrounded by Boromir.
To resolve that. The spear rule says an infantry model that is armed with a spear may assist a friendly model.
I got everyone excited on the podcast. I just broke new territory, and Matt put me back in my place.
Well, this is an interesting point, though. Would you actually take them mounted with a longbow at 17?
Yeah, I think that's why. If you're going to take them mounted, you take a couple of them, you give them the longbow, and then they can run off, sit on the remote objective, and just kind of plink away with their strength 3 bow from there.
Okay. We'll move on to the next model, which is a very popular one amongst everyone, which is the Guard of the Fountain Court. And I will move that over to Matt Iverson.
The answer is yes.
Yes, you must take them.
The answer is actually no. All right, so Guard of the Fountain Court. Fight 4, Strength 3, Defense 6, 1 attack, 1 wound, Courage 3. Heavy armor, dagger, and spear. You can replace the spear with a banner, and you can give them a shield for 1 point. Their special rule is bodyguard. And I don't know, this is going to be a point of differentiation. I end up rarely taking these guys just because of the points, because I find I can find a more point efficient solution somewhere else in the list. If I want a bodyguard figure, I'll get a Citadel guard. If I want a defense 7 guy to stand in the front of the line, I'll take a warrior of Minas Tirith. If I want a fight 4 guy with a spear, I'll take a ranger of Gondor. But if I got a few points left over, then I think I will upgrade my handful of Citadel guard to these guys. But I know Devin and his meta down there in DC has entire armies full of this guy. So
What's thematic? They were all over Middle Earth.
it's true. They were. You couldn't swing a dead cat in Minas Tirith without hitting a Fountain Court guard.
So,
But talk through the theory behind my army is entirely guard of the Fountain Court.
I mean, Matt's right. At this point, they obviously shifted things where before in the old meta, you would see these guys literally everywhere. You can, unless you're playing Horde Gondor, you just brought these. And now, you can find a lot of purpose in the other units. I think it's the fact that they bring all of it together. They bring the Defense 7 combined with the Fight 4. And to Matt's point, if you do Rangers backed up by Rangers backing up Warriors of Minas Tirith, you can get, for the most part, all of the functions that these guys provide. I think the reason you see armies of them is the bodyguard. Defense 7 means you're not heroic combating through these unless you're Bolg or something. The Fight 4 combined with the banner of Minas Tirith. I mean, I want to actually math it out and see how many models you're actually losing by having an army of these guys. I wish I kind of did that before the podcast, but I think you just see these because they just fulfill every single function. And they often, you're going to lose the bow war. If you bring an army of these, you're clearly going to your opponent. That is your intent. But luckily, you're not getting shot off the table. Whereas if you have Warriors of Minas Tirith backed by Rangers, you could be theoretically. I mean, if you're fighting against, let's say Corsairs, I think you're going to lose that gunfight. Whereas here, I'm not too worried. It's kind of I struggle to make this argument that I don't think that it is required that you should do this. I don't think that this is the go-to Gondor list. This is the meta winner. I think there is a lot of reasons, and most specifically for what Matt stated, the points is that it's more points efficient to bring all the other stuff. But I guess I just find that these guys are so hard to chomp through, and then they don't really have any weaknesses. There's no real weaknesses with other than the strength 3. I guess that's one reason I like them so much. For 11 points. Trying to think, you compare him to an Iron Hills warrior. And
I think the closest comparison is, you could say the Iron Hills warrior because the only difference really is the strength 4 and the courage 3.
Well, the Iron Hills warriors go up to defense 8 too because they have shield wall.
Yeah, there's that. I think if we're talking stat line specifically, the closest comparison might be a Khazad guard. Obviously, they don't have a spear, but they have the same exact stat line. Besides that, they have bodyguard and they have
Except these guys can shield, which is nice.
That's true.
These guys are just so good the whole game. You come up against a shooting army, they're going to soak up a whole bunch of bowfire or even crossbow fire if you throw a shield on them. And then late game, they're bodyguard. And they all have spears too. So it's the whole time through the game, these guys are going to be a thorn in your side. Albeit whether if you take 15% of your army, 20% of your RB, or Rob Cron, 95% of your army being these guys. But I think they're quite a pain, and their only thing that doesn't make them perfect is that they're only strength 3. I don't think they need it, and the ability to. We're comparing them to dwarves, but I think the cheapest dwarf hero is probably 65 or so points. Mm-hmm. Average rounds up to maybe 85. You can throw these guys in a Gondor list with a 50-point hero who can heroic march across the field. These guys, just what they give to Gondor is so well. And I know we've tooted Boromir's horn, but fight 5 bodyguard troops for 11 if you have Boromir's horn banner. Fight 5 D7 bodyguard units is just not fun to play against, to be honest.
That's the other thing is they have defense 7 natural, so it's you don't need the shield wall to grant it. Once you get the Gondorians, kind of if you have front rank Warriors, Minas Tirith, back rank Rangers, getting rid of that shield wall is as simple as getting in combat with them. And that's it. Like,
Unless you have Ingold.
Unless you have Ingold, yeah, that's right. So if you have Ingold, you don't have to bring Fountain Court Guard. But otherwise, like as soon as you're in combat, yeah, I mean, if you're doing that front back, that's the other argument I could say to it is that you do lose that defense 7. And it's immediate because you push them back and then that's it. That's the end of your defense 7. So
here's an interesting point, though. If you took 2 Fountain Court Guards with shields, which I think everybody takes them shields regardless, and you took a Ranger of Gondor with spears and a Warrior Minas Tirith in front with shield, that's a 5-point difference between those two. That's 5 points you save by doing those two. So if you were to do a war band of that, that's 30 points right there that you save. So to Matt's point, not only do you get the fight 5 and you have a pretty high defense front rank, you also save 30 points for 1 warband by doing that.
What was the composition you said?
So if you did a warband of Fountain Court Guard, and let's say you did a warband of either Rangers with spear supported or Warriors of Minas Tirith with shield.
Just Rangers, or
well, no. What I'm saying is the front rank is completely Warriors of Minas Tirith with shield, right? And the back rank is either Rangers of Gondor with spear or Warriors of Minas Tirith with shield and spear, because they're the same points. You save 30 points for that warband.
And that's the clear argument, right? Like, is the cost savings. It just depends on what you value, because you're getting a bodyguarded front line. If you happen to not care about that because of the courage buff, maybe you even, I don't think you would do this, but like maybe if you're allied with fiefdoms and you're grabbing like, what's his name, Forlong, then yeah, probably the bodyguard isn't really as relevant. But I mean, yeah, you're losing the bodyguard, you lose the defense 7. I mean, those are the 2 main things I would say. And by the way, are you saying 30 points when you're factoring in, does a front line have spears? Because remember, we said that it's 11 points apiece, but that's if you gave everyone spears. If you go full front line, back line, then that's not everyone having spears. 6 of them don't.
Yeah, the front rank just has shield. The back rank have shield and spear or Rangers of Gondor.
Oh, wait. Never mind. They all are 11. Sorry. I'm thinking for some reason you're paying for the spear, but you're not. You're paying for the shield. So
yeah, you're paying for
and that's really my biggest sadness when I look at the Fountain Court is that the spear comes with it base. I mean, because really I like these guys in the front line. And then
it'd be cool if they had swords too, like they were holding like a shield with a sword profile. That'd be pretty cool to see as well. Basically, what I'm going to ask you is, if you took majority Guard of the Fountain Court, do you take more than 2 warbands worth, or do you go completely Guards of the Fountain Court? So do you include archers if you include Guard of the Fountain Court completely? So do you go 1/3 bows and let's say 2 warbands of Fountain Court Guard, or do you go 3 warbands of Fountain Court Guard?
Well, I think bringing bows is a great idea. I mean, I've obviously down in DC, we play lists where it's just like almost 100% Fountain Court, and you're clearly going to your opponent in those lists. But and I say almost 100% because you're sprinkling cav and such. But I mean, yeah, I don't see a problem with you going 33% bows and then trying to win the bow war, especially if you have Gandalf in the list. So
okay, all right. We'll move on to the next profile, which is something you don't see almost ever, but we did see in our list earlier, the Osgiliath Veteran. So I'll move that over to Matt H.
The answer is no.
the most competitive unit in the game. All right, so sarcasm aside, we've got the Osgiliath Veteran, 8 points base. Man, Gondor, infantry, warrior keywords. Movement 6, fight 3, hit on a 4+, strength 3, defense 5, 1 attack, 1 wound. Courage 4, so a little bit higher than the normal warriors. They come with a heavy armor and a sword. You can kit them out with a bow for 1 point, a shield for 1 point, a spear for 1 point. And they have a special rule, loyal to the captains, passive. The veteran, let's see, if this model is within 6 inches of either Boromir or Faramir, then this model will receive +1 bonus to its fight value. This is cumulative with other fight value bonuses. So the obvious there is you'd go up to fight 4 if you're next to Boromir, and if he's got the banner, you could have potentially fight 5 warriors.
Well, actually, so correct me if I'm wrong. If this model is within 6 inches of either Boromir or Faramir, then this model is. Okay, so I thought it was Boromir and Faramir. Never mind, it's Boromir or Faramir. Okay,
Yeah.
I was gonna say maybe you could get them to fight 6 with the banner, but no, it's or specifically. My question to you guys is, with this profile, if they had lowered them by 1 point and given them shield wall, wouldn't we see these a lot more?
I think you would have made the Warriors Minas Tirith irrelevant.
Okay, so even if you kept them at 8 points, but just simply gave them
shield wall,
they would be they'd be seen a lot more because you could fight 5 guys.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think we're not here to say like what they should do, but I mean, if you just simply gave these guys shield wall, you're going to see them a lot more because they are courage 4, so they go up to courage 5 too.
Well, it's clearly that they're going for the fact that they've been fighting for so long and are such hardened veterans. They forgot the basic warrior.
Yeah, they forgot how to stand next to the guy on their left.
I guess they didn't want you to fight in a shield wall with these guys. I think they wanted them to be that ragtag running around the rubble. And if they had just given them like, I don't know, woodland creature, or which there's an argument the Rangers of Condor should have that. No, if you gave them base fight 4, then you get to potentially fight 6.
Well, you could make it so you. I mean, I know that changes the rules, obviously, but like, I guess
what you would need to do if you give them fight 4 is make it not cumulative.
Yes.
If you did that, then there's a reason to take them because you're saving points in the banner.
Yeah.
Or it gives a reason to bring Faramir because now you bring Faramir and now you have fight 5 guys all over the place.
Well, wait a second. I mean, if you just got rid of the loyal to the captain special rule and you made them fight 4, aren't they appropriately costed?
No. What he means is keep that rule, but then make them fight 4 base, maybe even increase them by a point. But then you have a reason to take them because now you can save points on like the banner in order to get fight 5 troops in the army. That's what Tim was getting at, right, Tim? I think. Yeah. So basically, then there's a reason to take them because then you can take Faramir, whom is a much more cost-effective than Boromir with the banner, who goes up to 225 points. So much more cost-effective, and you're still getting that fight 5. Or you could take Boromir and not take the banner, which allows you to take his lance, which makes him more killy. So once again, then you could bring these guys, Osgiliath veterans, and it would make sense. And you wouldn't bring an army of them because their bonus is limited to within 6 inches of them, which is perfect. That's actually the limiting factor that's very natural to their profile. It's a reason, actually, something probably Guard of the Fountain Court should have, so you don't take so many of them. But, yeah, I mean, as they are now, there is very, very little reason to take these guys.
Plus, I want to mention that they're called veterans. They've been fighting, so theoretically, shouldn't they be a better fight than the Warriors of Minas Tirith? Because they've been through battle.
If we're in an alternate universe, the way I would do this is I would just say they're all fight 4. I'd get rid of the loyal to the captain special rule, and then I would just change it so that you could only take these guys in warbands led by Faramir, Madril, or Boromir.
And that's another way to solve it as well, if you wanted to go like that.
Because to be fair, if you did what Matt said, then they're fight 4. With Boromir, they'd be fight 5. With the army bonus, they're courage 5, and then they can still get if you gave them shield wall.
Yeah, I think you also give them shield wall.
And then you gave them shield wall, their defense. They become very useful at that point, and then more people will definitely start to take these things.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because their models actually.
They're very cool models.
Very cool
models. They're very unique poses, and I really like them. It's a shame you don't really see them.
I mean, GW saved me a ton of money on these guys.
Thanks, GW, for making it so we didn't have to buy your models. Good job.
Okay. We're going to move into the artillery. And we're going to move into – I'm interested to hear about this from Devin specifically because we almost never see this ever. And I'm curious from your perspective if it's because of the model after this. But we'll move on to it. It's the Gondor Battle Cry Trebuchet. So I'll move over to Devin for that.
All right. So we have it's a siege engine for 80 points. It's a strength 10 siege weapon, which only applies to its actual target it's hitting, not the area effect. Defense 10, 3 wounds, so you're probably only killing it by standing next to it for a turn. It's a large siege engine. I'm going to kind of skim through this, but essentially it's manned with, 3 clear Three crew, no additional war gear. It's all just Minas Tirith warriors. You can take a couple upgrades, which is the engineer captain, which you should never do under any circumstances. The flaming ammunition, which you should also probably never do, and the additional crew, which is optional. So then it has 3 special rules. Trebuchet, it has indirect fire, which means it always fires at from 12 to 96 inches. The 96 part is probably for scenario play because I don't think that's even possible in tournaments.
Well, if you want to shoot at the table, 2 boards.
Yeah, exactly. Should include that as a new rule. You fire to someone else's table. Then you have and it has an area effect. So if it scores a hit against a battlefield target, all models within 2 inches suffer a strength 5 hit and are knocked prone. Including the target, of course. And then Wall Breaker, another rule, once again, for scenario play. When you roll a wound against a siege target, you roll 2 dice and pick the highest. Well, I guess you can fire at Smaug and a movement kill. No, Smaug is not a siege target. It's just a movement kill. That's right. Movement kill is the only one you can fire at and have this take effect. Other than that, so as to why you don't see it, I actually should clarify that to say you actually do see it, just not in DC. Probably not in, the...
I took it to Canada.
Yeah, you actually do see this. When I've gone to Throne of Skulls in Britain, when I've gone to the Warhammer World GT, I have seen these weapons. And in fact, I've even seen multiples of these weapons. The Trebuchet is a fantastic option if you just want to dictate, battlefield control without bringing a bunch of archers. You would have to factor in whether or not 80 points is worth 9 Rangers of Gondor. Because ultimately with this weapon, you're not really going to hit your opponent. I often find that the siege engine is meant to disrupt battle lines by the psychological effect it has on your opponent. It not only makes your opponent move to you, but it splits them up, which can be pretty devastating for most armies if they move too slowly to reform back up. You end up hitting them in a way where they really didn't want you to hit them another way. The fact that it can't fire into combat because you're not evil is the reason I think you see it less than, let's say, I'm trying to think of an evil siege weapon that you actually, because the mortar catapult's a bad example because you have to pay 180 points for the thing, or 60. But yeah, I mean, you do see it. Long story short, Tim, you actually do see it. In fact, there's a guy, Harry Parkhill, I believe is his name. He actually runs his own podcast. He brings these things all the time. he's constantly bringing them, and so I think. In fact, I think at one event he brought 3 of them. Yeah, Matt, you said you brought it to Canada.
Yep.
What was your experience with this thing?
I mean, I thought it was a great. I mean, I had it in a 1,000-point list with fiefdoms and Gandalf the White and Minas Tirith, and I mean, I thought it was a great ad. I mean, I had a bunch of shooters beside this, but if you take one of these things, your opponent's coming to you, and it really forces your opponent to spread out. And it also it forces your opponent to charge his heroes in quickly, because one of the things this thing does is if it catches somebody in the blast area, it will dismount the guy, even if you don't kill him. So this can have a devastating effect on mounted heroes, especially since you've got the siege veteran now, and you just need to get a 5 on the scatter in order to get this thing on target. So for 80 points, which is really not that much, it's a really decent add to the list.
Actually, a great point that Matt brought is at 1,000 points, this thing is so cost effective because you get the rest of your archers, but you're splitting them up, which means they're losing blinding light. And at 1,000 points, they probably have an army that is already hard enough to get within blinding light. But now, I mean, you can pick apart them that way. Cavalry armies are forced to come to you very quickly. If they spread out, then they can lose a lot of effectiveness. I think at 1,000 points, these things are absolutely worth their investment, and because you're not really losing much by taking them, and you're always getting the trebuchet where you want it to be. And whereas archers, let's say you're playing Maelstrom, you might end up with your archer line like right in the middle of your opponent's force. So I mean, there's arguments that obviously, like, your opponent can deploy right on top of your siege engines, but basically, long story short, for a lot of other scenarios, yeah, you can bring it exactly where you want it to be. I think these are actually great investments. I think just simply, you don't see them in America as much. I don't know. Actually, you know what, Matt H, do you see them in Texas?
Yeah, quite a bit. And my brother Mitch up in Washington actually has a 1,000-point tournament army that he runs. It's Sons of Errol, allied with King of Men, Minas Tirith, and it's mostly all mounted, and he puts this trebuchet in the back. And the effects you guys already described of having to spread out and then come to you just sets him up for the cavalry. He actually top-tabled with it back in March. But yeah, it's really effective. I agree with all the points you guys said. I see them in Texas a lot, but what's interesting is it's almost always upgraded to a siege veteran, which I kind of like because I kind of view that as a free 50 points. But
You mean the siege captain?
Yeah, I should have said that. The siege captain, which a couple times has gotten me when they drop 2 might to get the six. But yeah, but
so you actually do see them upgraded.
I do, but I don't agree with it personally. I always kind of laugh. I always make fun of the people that are doing it because it's like my voice is Saruman.
50
telling
points
them,
for a point of might. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you? I cannot support that.
Find 3 other guys and just bring a second trebuchet.
There you go. There you go.
I mean, yeah.
The volley fire is ridiculous.
You know what's actually interesting about the trebuchet is the fact that it is more than 2 inches tall, which raises kind of interesting. I've actually had this situation where I used the trebuchet as cover against a Mumak because the Mumak can't step over it because of how tall the thing is. So like all my guys would like run around to the other side of the trebuchet while the Mumak hits the trebuchet and then charge the Mumak.
Actually, that's an interesting also thought is that if you have this thing and the lines meet and the scenario is such that you're not going to split up again, you probably should just carry this thing into battle and allow your veterans to fight.
Anchor your flank on it.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, you know what? I wonder. No, well, I guess it'll get removed pretty quickly. But I was thinking, like, what if you created like some kind of blockade, like with it, but someone will stand next to it for a turn.
I'm just going to say this: at 800 points, maybe you take 10 trebuchets. I don't know.
Well, no, because then you end up with the whatever that scenario. Well, actually, I suppose it wouldn't matter. But the problem, one of the problems with this thing, and this can create problems when you have multiples of these things, is it does have a 12-inch minimum.
You're not talking about 10, of course. You're talking about like 3, right?
Well, I mean, I just would like to.
No,
see
I know.
somebody
Tim mentioned 10 trebuchets, and then you started going into a serious dialogue about it. So I want to make sure our audience knows you're not actually saying.
Well, you can't actually take 10 trebuchets because there is that rule that's hidden in. I think it's the Army List building rule where you have to have at least 1 hero of fortitude in your list for every siege weapon that you take. Yeah. So you can't take an artillery park, but it made me think of another thought, which is one weakness this thing does have is a 12-inch minimum range. So once you get within 12 inches of it, it's useless, which can be a problem if you're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to take like 3 of these things and 3 captains. Is once the enemy gets within 12 inches of you, your 3 trebuchets become useless. So don't get too excited.
Just had to crush my dreams, didn't you? Just wanted to see somebody take 10.
That's why I'm here, Tim.
There is the next siege weapon that I do want to see people take 10 of.
Okay. This has become much more popular. You see this in a lot of Gondor lists now because of the points and how effective it is. So I'll move it over to Matt, which is the Gondor Avenger Bolt Thrower.
All right. So the Avenger Bolt Thrower, which has a strength of 7, a defense of 10, and 3 wounds. It is a small siege engine. It's crewed by 2 warriors of Minas Tirith with heavy armor and sword. One of those crew is the siege veteran, and they have standard crewish profiles. You can upgrade the siege veteran to a Minas Tirith engineer captain, which you should never do for the trebuchet, and you should never do for the Gondor Avenger Bolt Thrower. You can get swift reload for 20 points. and I think swift reload.
Roll 2 dice and pick the highest.
Yeah, roll two dice and pick the highest for rapid fire. You can buy additional crew. So this weapon only has a 24-inch range, and it has the rapid fire rule. So it fires D6 shots each turn rather than 1. If you get the swift reload, then you're rolling 2 dice. And it's an ordinary shooting attack rather than as a siege engine. So this does not auto kill a figure if it hits him. It does a strength 7 shot, but it's basically like a strength 7 bow. It's not going to auto kill the guy unless he rolls fate, which is what the trebuchets do with if the rock lands on top of the guy, you kill him if he doesn't make his fate roll. There are no scatter rolls, so again, it's just like a bow, and you roll to hit and then to wound. So what this weapon is, this is different from any of the other siege weapons in the game. This is not an artillery piece. This is a heavy machine gun. All right, that's how you should think about it. It is an area denial weapon that you use it like a machine gun, and the purpose of the machine gun is not to gun tremendous numbers of people down, because nobody's going to charge into the face of a machine gun. It's you set it up in the right place, and that prevents people from charging across particular places of the ground. And so people have to either use cover to approach you, or they have to go around, or they need to stay out of your range. So that's the most important thing to think about when you're using this weapon, is you really have to think about where you want to put it, and think about which areas of the board do you want to try and deny to the other player. But you have to be careful when you put it up that it doesn't have dead space, because just like a machine gun, if somebody can sneak up on you and bushwhack you from an area that you can't cover with the machine gun shooting, then it's useless. Back in the day, before I think it's one of the new FAQs did this, but you used to be able to kind of capture siege weapons and use them against your opponents. I think I had actually killed more figures with my opponent's Avenger bolt throwers than I had lost to my opponent's Avenger bolt throwers. and that's largely because they ended up kind of being put in the wrong place, and I could kind of jump on top of them. I could either stay out of their range and force them to continually move around trying to chase me down, or I could jump on top of them and kill them and capture them and turn them against my opponents. But that's why you really have to – I can't emphasize this enough. You have to think about where you put these down. Make sure that they're like covering objectives or covering the lines of advance that other folks are going to have to use to get at your army.
Yeah, positioning is everything. I totally agree with that. From when I've used them and when I've seen them used, you can usually tell when you come up against a new player that brings them straight off the bat how they deploy them, how well they're going to use them, because I agree 100%. Positioning is everything. Have a view, a whole area view that it's just going to dominate, because it is like you said, a machine gun. It's a little baby Gatling gun with Gondorians going like it's amazing.
Can you say how would you deploy them?
I would deploy it, of course. If there's a hill, put it on a hill. If there's a terrain piece, deploy it like you would deploy Legolas, to have the most range. That said, too, don't deploy it in an area knowing that your army is going to be in the opposite end of the battlefield. You want it to use it as suppressing fire for your army, or as a threat for when your opponent comes at you, because you're going to have a 24-inch range of just potential death. And I know we say this, 50 points, of course. A lot of people listening to this podcast use them and know that they're not always machine guns. Sometimes you order a machine gun, you get a muzzle loader. It happens. But just the threat of strength 7 hits can kill a Húrin. It can kill a hero. It can dehorse heroes. It can blow through any high defensed army line. It's just a huge threat. And I would even potentially use them like a crossbow too. Don't just put it in a place where you're going to keep it there and your army's playing over here. Think a couple turns ahead of time. Okay, I'm going to move them over here for the next 2 turns when they're going to need to be in position to hit my opponent's flank when I go into it, or to cover my army in a certain type of scenario. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to use them, but all in all, I agree with Matt. For 50 points for a potential machine gun, like, do it. Play it right, but do it.
I think
So Rainier, if you're playing objective scenarios, do you ever use them to like say domination? Do you kind of make a plan, my army will go left and this is going to just deny the 2 objectives on the right and buy some time for me to go clean up on the left-hand side? Or do you just strictly think of it as a troop killer versus keep people off an objective?
No, I do it that, but I would never isolate it by itself.
Okay.
I'd always keep at least maybe 6 or 7 guys with it.
Just to keep it from getting swarmed?
Yeah, keep it from getting swarmed, and it makes it even more of a threat because now you can escort it somewhere. And I don't know, we had a battle on this podcast before, and I forget who took them, but he put them both on the corner.
I
like the idea.
Tim, yeah.
I can't remember who did
I
that.
don't know.
It was a schmuck, but I don't want to say any names. Oh yeah, it was Tim.
As soon as he deployed, I instantly knew my opponent.
Wasn't it Mick? I think Mick did it, right?
Yeah.
Mick corrected it.
So,
no, but I was going to say
a person who, for purposes of anonymity, will call Tim, and we'll go on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we'll just because it's a generic name, so I'll use a generic name. So there's just think Tim Hines because it's a generic name.
Yeah.
So he brought 2 of them and he placed them both in a corner. So don't do that. If you have 2, place 1 each in the corner, because then you have 48 inches of just
Interlocking
death.
fields of fire.
Exactly. It's exactly what I don't want to use this example, but I'm going to use it. It's what the Japanese did at Iwo Jima. They let the guys come in and they suppress fired like this. But if you have 1, I'd argue putting it in the middle of the battlefield, because it does the same thing. You have 24 inches this way, 24 inches this way. You put it in the corner, even if you use the strategy that a lot of people do. Corner objectives, like you said, Matt H, corner objective here, put your army here, press this way and protect these. I wouldn't want to do that. I'd want to put them in the middle. Then you have a threat of your opponent coming in the middle, and you could dictate your army. Okay, I want to maybe be aggressive this way, but hold back here, defend this objective. And now he's going to shoot and do the exact same example like Iwo Jima fire. Or I want to push this forward, and then now your opponent can't come in and flank this because you have it up the middle. So there's a lot of, I say you have 1 and you're playing objectives, put it in the middle. You have 2, do the double thing.
Yeah,
always play it like Legolas, basically.
I'd go even further, and if you have 1, I'd put it in the middle of your battle line, because this is because it's a small siege weapon, it's like a dwarf ballista. It's basically 25 mil, and you can actually put guys on either side of it, put a battle line on either side of it, and because it has no zone of control, it's actually relatively secure there, because in most circumstances, you can't actually move a guy. Because it has a zone of control, you can't actually move a guy into contact with it and have him sit there for a turn, because of the zones of control on either side. And even if somebody does move somebody into contact with it, it can still shoot that turn. So you can just, blow him away. I mean, as long as he can't get around and contact the crew that's actually serving it, if you've got a battle line protecting them, just having somebody move into contact with the front of the bolt thrower will not stop the bolt thrower from shooting. So it ends up becoming a situation where you've got guys charging the guns and getting blown back. Over and over again, and it kind of puts the other guy into a dilemma of well, if I want to get rid of this bolt thrower, I have to charge into the middle of his shield wall, and if I want to come to grips with the shield wall, I have to close on the Avenger bolt thrower and take shots on my way in. And there isn't a good answer to that unless you're going to kind of go all the way around, in which case your battle line then rotates around the bolt thrower, so the bolt thrower is always coming to bear on the guy who's trying to get around.
Yeah, and it adds to the whole it adds to the whole aggressive Gondorian player strategy too, because you don't have to just set it up on a hill and keep it there. If your army's moving forward and they're out of the range of the bolt thrower, heck, like Matt was saying, put it in the middle and like here it comes, and it's coming. Then when the opponent comes to you, I even like the whole wedge formation. You put your guys, the bolt in the middle, and your guys like this way, because it still gets the whole line of sight of everyone, but it's coming at you. I don't know.
Even
I
if the
like
guy on either side, as long as they're in contact with the bolt thrower can shoot through it.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask you guys is, when do you try to fit this in your Minas Tirith list? And do you only stick to one, or do you try to get two?
That's a good question.
I mean, I think this is going to really depend on your list. But you can get two. I mean, I've seen people do 3 or 4 of these. I think it gets excessive past 3. I think the reason you see more than one is if you're actually trying to make these things kill, because I think the psychological factor that Matt alluded to, and I think everyone has alluded to actually, is more important with siege weapons. A lot of new players often get frustrated because they're like, I'm not killing anything with my siege weapons. And I'm like, well, that's not really what they're there for. They're actually for the threat of what you could do. It's a threat that the trebuchet could get a natural 6 on a hero and wipe him out, or the threat that you could roll a 6 and get all these shots. But realistically, let's look at an Avenger Bolt Thrower. You get D6 shots, so it could be 1 to 3. And then half of them you're missing anyway. And then of those half you're missing, a third of those are not even wounding. So realistically, if you only have one of these things, how many models are you actually killing in a game? You're probably making your points back, but maybe you'll kill like 5. And that can be a little bit depressing in a way if you're trying to get this like machine gun effect. So when you see like 3 of them, you're really aiming to just shoot your opponent off the table as much as possible. That is your goal. And I think for 100 points, 150 points, to get 2 3d6 shots of strength 7, now you basically turned your bolt throwers into your actual archers. So at that point, I would say you bring 2 or 3 if you have, like, not to say no other archers, you could still bring archers if you want to, but if you don't have any, then I think it becomes more viable if that's your goal, is to really make sure your opponent comes to you.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I feel like I've seen them so many times at tournaments. I've had friends play them, I've played against them, and I've heard just people complaining on other tables just of how ineffective they actually are. But I want to piggyback on what Devin said, just the psychological scariness of having like a Gatling gun really will spook your opponent. Having 1, having 2 or 3, I like what you said, like that's where you're actually gonna get the damage done, because you can use it as machine gun nests, moving forward, shooting, suppressing fire, killing zones, basically, like cross people up. But yeah.
Think hard, by the way, about buying an additional crewman for these, because they only come with 2 crew. And getting one of these guys pinged out by Legolas or just an ordinary archer can.
Now,
I think they FAQ'd that and they made it 3.
Oh, did they make it 3?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
3 now.
Good.
But that leads me to my next question that I had for you guys. I've only played this twice, and each time I did, I bought the Swift Reload. They weren't competitive games, but where's your guys' heads at 20 points for an extra D6 to try and up?
I think if you have one of them, then they can probably be a good idea. If you have more than one, then no. I think what you're going for there is points effective. I just think if you have 2 with Swift Reload, that's 140 points you're dumping into siege weapons that no longer are effective as soon as you hit combat. That is a lot for a point sink. So I like Swift Reload. I actually do think it's a really good rule, but I'm not convinced. Because you're realistically in a game, in most games, you're only using this for like 2 or 3 turns. After that, unless the game is like has you all over the place, or you've really got creative, like you're on a hill where you can fire over the battle lines into the back ranks or something like that, a lot of times you're going to find your siege weapon suddenly can't fire anymore because you're not evil. And so that's why I hesitate on the Swift Reload, but I don't know. Anyone disagree with me on that?
Well, I think as well with the Swift Reload, for 10 more points, you could get a trebuchet. So
yeah.
Well, I think you're doing a different function then.
Yeah, they fulfill very different functions. But the thought then becomes, if you're going to have 2 of these,
wouldn't you rather have 3?
Well, yeah, maybe. Or maybe what you do is you have 1 bolt thrower with Swift Reload, and your other one becomes a trebuchet. because then you have both things covered. You've got the long range artillery piece, and you've got the heavy machine gun to, cover the short range fire.
Yeah, I think the 24 inches makes them less effective as the dwarf ballista, just in the sense that your opponent can stay out of that 24-inch shooting, or even I've come across it with my Harad or my Corsairs, and I win like a heroic shoot off, and I take out like 2 of the crew member. So that's possible. To where I don't know. I agree so much with what Devin said, and like you're only realistically gonna get 1 or 2 shots.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to bring up again. I'm like, you have to remember these things hit on a 4, and so even if you get the 6, it never usually makes the impact a lot. I mean, yeah, it's nice if you kill like Iron Hills and you're like wiping them out with it, but the thing is, you paid for that swift reload regardless of what you fought. So whether it's Goblin Town or Iron Hills, and you're really suffering for it when you fight Horde armies that don't care. If it was a 3-up accuracy, then I'd be like, well, maybe. But
you know what I think this is a good add too, by the way, is the Fountain Court Guard list.
Yeah. Exactly. Actually, that's where I would often see them, is because you're spam down Fountain Court Guard, you don't have any archery. This gives that option for very cheap, 50 points. You just drop it in. And the best part about it is you're actually adding 3 models to your list as well. So you're not even like the problem with the Fountain Court Guard that Matt mentioned is the point sink, right? Like, so you're getting less models. Well, this kind of helps you with that problem. You're getting 3 models for 50 points. That's not points effective, but you're still not losing out very much by bringing one.
I'd also consider it a good take with Dune here from the Fiefdoms list. I mean, if you combine 1 or 2 of these with Dune here and his Blackroot Veil Archers, like, ooh boy, you can have a field day.
Make sure to max out your Blackroot Veil, though.
Although actually, if you've got Blackroot Veil Archers, you almost don't need these because they serve the same function.
Yeah, I mean, other than Iron Hills, Blackroot Veil are taking out a lot.
Yeah, I love it. I just want to give a quick shout out to like Robert Loper from the DCHL when I played him at one of your guys' events, and I think I played him actually in North Carolina. I had conned, and he had like 2 or 3 of these guys, and it was like a scene from The Last Samurai where I was just like charging all my horses and my chariots, and he was just like da, 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 and they were just getting slaughtered, and they just kept coming. So that's like one of my fondest memories of SBG comes from that game, when he's just mowing on a hill, mowing my guys down.
Man, I guess that's it for Gondor as one of the larger factions. I'm actually, for a faction that has like, I think this faction has like triple the number of heroes that it actually has troops.
This episode went by fast.
I think we had like 16. I think it's got like 20 plus heroes. I think.
Yeah, it's like up there. Just plethora of heroes, but yeah, no, I mean, as far as, I think Minas Tirith is an army where you're really dictated. Your army is structured based on your heroes. Like the troops are like this filler thing, but it's really your heroes that are kind of like changing the Minas Tirith list from this to this, and how they kind of operate. I mean, not to say obviously, a Minas Tirith warrior front line and a ranger back line plays very differently from an all Fountain Court Guard, but and actually it's sad because we talked about all these models, and 2 of them, we all kind of agreed that you're not really playing. So it's like, oh, that sucks.
Hey guys, where is the FAQ about the? Or I'm looking at an errata here. Where is the FAQ about giving an extra figure to the Gondor boat thrower? Is it in designers?
It was in like one of the first ones that they released.
Yeah, it's going to be in the it's in the Armies of Lord of the Rings errata. It's going to be in the errata.
I just looked there and I didn't see it. Official errata. Let's see.
When they print out the FAQ book, no. I feel like
there it is. I just missed it. Yep. Okay.
You found it?
Yep.
Okay.
Which I'm actually kind of surprised that they did that. Is the Dwarf Ballista, does it have 3 crew?
No, it has 2.
So yeah, like I'm really like,
they just made it match the model pack.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. So, which interestingly enough, this is one of the few games I've ever seen that is totally dictated in its rules based on what the actual model looks like and how many come in a box.
Mm.
So this is one of the few games where the design space is heavily limited by that. So.
Oh, by the way, something somebody pointed out online, and we should really point out before we leave the subject of Minas Tirith, is the King of Men's heroic tier was raised to Hero of Valor, along with a bunch of the other kings. So.
Luckily, I wasn't on that episode, so I can't be faulted for that mistake.
So when Devin said it was a hero of fortitude, he was wrong.
Okay. Well, thank you for tuning in this week. Let us know if you agree with our thoughts and put your own in the comment section below. If you have any lists that you'd like us to review, leave those as well. And anything you'd like us to review in future episodes, leave that as well. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye.